Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Allison Verbanek, like Karen said, and I am the Public Program Specialist at the Peel Art Gallery Museum and Archives. Like we said, unfortunately, chillily located in the Peel region. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us and our artist talk this evening, featuring the visual and textile artists from When Nights Stirred at Sea, Contemporary Caribbean Art, presented in partnership with Black Artists Network in Dialogue. Before we get started, I'd like to take a moment to make a traditional land acknowledgement. Since this program is being held virtually, a singular land acknowledgement does not capture the richness of our distribution across many locations from which we have attendees joining us today. As PAMA is part of the region of Peel, I will share the acknowledgement that is used for the region and invite everyone to consider their own position with regards to the land on which they find themselves. The land on which we gather and on which the region of Peel operates is part of the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. For thousands of years, Indigenous peoples inhabited and cared for this land. In particular, we acknowledge the territory of the Anishinaabe, the Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Ojibwa-Chippewa peoples. The land that is home to the Métis, and most recently the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, who are direct descendants of the Mississaugas of the Credit. We are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land and by do so give our respect to its first inhabitants. While we're sorry that the current lockdown prevents this exhibition from being explored in person at this time, we do encourage you to explore the exhibition virtually with our available 360-degree tour for an opportunity to appreciate the immense talent of this group of artists. With that, it is my absolute pleasure to hand you over to the exhibition's co-curator, Karen Carter herself. Thank you so much.
Thanks a million, Allison. And thank you again for being here representing the team at Peel and for being such gracious hosts and collaborators on this exhibition. As mentioned, the lockdown has meant that there was not as much access as we would have liked, but we're also happy that we were able to mount the show. I think there's a colleague in LA, when I told him we had the work physically there, he was in shock because so much work had just been put up in a virtual manner in this period. So we're really grateful for that. Myself and my co-curator for this exhibition, also director of the art fair, Greg Manuel, had a really interesting opportunity here because we talked with Peel about doing this show at the gallery before we left Jamaica, or I did, and wasn't sure what that would mean because, I mean, those of you who know me know I'm a bit crazy with the fearlessness of just being willing to throw something at the wall and see what sticks. And this is probably the most fearless I've been in a long time in launching this art fair with zero money, but a lot of goodwill and really smart people with resources and knowledge that helped to pull it together. So the fact that this manifests itself now in this show is really special for myself. And so I want to start by just saying thank you to all the artists that were willing to collaborate with us. You didn't know us before this, but you were willing to trust us to have your work brought to Canada and to Peel for this exhibition. We present this work as really a very small survey scan of what we saw in this first experiment of thinking about how you would consider the development of a Caribbean aesthetic outside of what I think is very much known in the contemporary art world as a very Latin American driven Caribbean aesthetic. And often people reference Caribbean art shows thinking and commenting on Caribbean-ness when if you poke and push and you start to look deeply at what's there, you're realizing it's all Latin American, and maybe there's the occasional French or English artist, but it never feels as though the region is represented fulsomely. And some of that, I think, because we know is about the ability to travel and move through the region. It's difficult. We saw that with even moving work from island to island to get work from Trinidad, for instance, to Jamaica was difficult. But we are excited for this start, and we're excited, as I said, for the artists listed here who are willing to participate with us, and for the opportunity to include on this in this talk folks that are astute and well known at senior levels of their career, such as Shelley Falconer, the CEO of the Art Gallery of Hamilton, Gaetane Verna, who is the director of the Power Plant Art Gallery, and the Textile Museum of Canada's Sarah Quinton. So their ability to, their willingness to take the time to participate in this conversation is a further, I think, punctuation for us of the importance of this show and the opportunity that this small start, it's that, you know, the drop, the pebble in the water that ripples, and the opportunity for what, we're excited for what will come. I'll throw over to my co-curator, Greg Manuel, to see if he wants to say a few words before we throw to the first artist whose work you're looking at right now, Javier Dayes, to comment a bit on his work and introduce himself, and we'll start to hear from the artist. Greg?
I would like to echo everything that you just said and sort of thank everybody for joining us, but also thank the artists for believing in this project, and honestly to thank you for reaching out to me and inviting me to be part of it, because it's been an incredible journey and trip and experience, and I keep learning, and that's what I love to do. So, and I'm just been so amazed at everything that's happened, and I think and everything that's going to continue to happen. So I'm glad that everybody's here tonight. I'm glad we can do these, you know, we can make this kind of a, we can do some programming around the exhibition. As you've said, it's been very hard to get people to see it for obvious reasons. We're hoping that it can continue. And as you mentioned, did you mention that
Not
it's
yet,
going to be?
You can mention, you do it.
Okay. It is going to be traveling. The show is going to open in the spring at the McLaren Arts Center in Barrie. And we're hoping by then that there'll be an opportunity for people to actually visit in person. So it's kind of exciting. It's great that this continues. And I think what we'd like to do now is open it up and to the artists themselves, who will provide us with a little bit of an introduction to their work, their practice, who they are, why they're making the work they're making, kind of a little bit of everything. So the first artist whose work you see in the slide right now is Javier Dayes. And I'm gonna just ask Javier to unmute and tell us a little bit about you. Good to see you.
Hi, Greg, how's it going? Thank you very much for everyone that signed in. Thanks to BAND Gallery, Karen, and the whole team for putting everything together. Are you guys hearing me clearly, by the way? All right, awesome.
There's a little echo, but we can hear you.
Yeah, my name is Javier Dayes. I am an artist currently living in Manchester, Jamaica. I do quite a few different things. I'm an abstract painter. I also paint on porcelain. I do digital collages. So that's what you're actually seeing on display is a digital collage. The photographer, Cesar Buelto, he's a good friend of mine. We just planned together one day. We went to downtown Kingston. I don't know if anyone is familiar. And we took some photos. We went through the photos. I did my edits. What you're actually seeing on the background of the photo that you're looking at is a picture taken of a mural that was also done downtown. Yeah. That's it. Oh, yeah.
Are you good, Javier? Should we move to Miles?
I mean, I'm an artist that really plays with colors and the way you view and interact with them. Just the type of colors that I use, it gives the picture a different feeling. So yeah, that's about it really.
Yeah, I'm gonna get Belinda to just jump back to the first one and then jump to this third one, because there's a woman who purchased the first one, and when she was in the process of making the purchase from the UK, because she had been at the art fair in Jamaica, but she hadn't seen the red. So I said, well, he's actually done the collage, the collaboration with the red, and she said, oh, let me see what the character, how it changes the feel of the work. And so when she saw, which we'll jump to the red backdrop again, she was like, that looks like someone's coming to hurt me. No, I'll stick to the warm. So it's interesting, as you said, a simple change, exact same image, but a simple change in the color. And it's just an interesting study, especially for those who are art historians, around the nature of what color means and the character and tone that it conveys to the viewer, and how color is used by artists for their messaging. So yeah, love this.
Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. How's it going? Can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, perfect. It's so wonderful to be here. My name is Miles Regis. I am a Trinidadian. I am based out of Los Angeles in the USA. I have been painting for all of my life, really. I've been a professional artist for the past 20 years. I left Trinidad at 21, so, you know, as a grown adult, and moved to Los Angeles for college, and I have been here ever since. Married, I have 2 teenage kids, a boy and a girl, 17 and 14. And my work sort of speaks to my experience, my experience as a Black Trinidadian man who left a warm Caribbean island and decided to raise a family in Los Angeles. The work in the show is very reflective of a 2020 experience. I believe that this work can be put in a time capsule. If you ever wanted to see what was happening in 2020, I think this is sort of, this body of work, the 4 pieces I have in this show sort of are really reflective of the realities of 2020. So the first piece that I did actually was not done in 2020. It was done in 2018, I believe. And that is Alone But Never Lonely. And I know Karen saw that piece. I posted it on Instagram right as the lockdown and where places started to shut down, and we were in quarantine. And I thought, you know what, this is a piece that really is reflective of the times. And so I posted it, and the response was overwhelming. I'm so glad that it was then brought into the show, where it was joined by the second piece that I did, which is Love on Lockdown, which again really was sort of an illustration of, my family, and staring at the couch, watching the news, going, what is going on? What is this reality that we're now living through? Like I said, my kids are much older, but I sort of decided that I could play with the emotions a little bit more with younger children. The next piece I did after that was America. And that was when the racial protests started to begin. I thought that it would be really important that I, document what was happening, the unrest, the marching, and just the sentiment, how we were feeling as Black people. This is sort of an emotion that we've lived with, particularly here in the US, with regard to the way that police, the treatment of Black people, where the police force is concerned. So I thought that I would do a piece that just was, again, I'm going to use the word reflective a lot, but I can't think of another word that would suit my expressions at the time better. It's a funny story with this. A friend of mine posted it. I sent it to him for consideration for a show that we were planning to do. And he posted it on Instagram. And the LA Weekly saw it, and it ended up being on the cover of the LA Weekly during that time. So as a result of that, I did prints of the America image, as well as Love on Lockdown, and the next piece I did after that, which is Better Days Ahead. And I did that sort of coming out of, you know, the protests and, you know, being bogged down with being on lockdown and COVID and the realities and you know, kids being at home and not being at school. Life got really difficult for very many. And I thought that I would do a piece that was sort of hopeful and really with the energy that I feel like we all needed. So, and that's sort of what I do. You know, I try to offer hope with, you know, the pieces that I do. I feel like if someone is collecting my work and they're bringing my energy into their home, that they should wake up and look at something that brings them calm and joy. So yeah, that's my story.
I'm going to check and see if any of the commentators, if Shelley or Gaetane or Sarah, if anybody wants to jump in, if there's questions. I was watching Shelley copiously taking notes. We good? I know Greg had a crazy love for your work, especially the, I think he saw the piece at the LA Times before I did. And I know there was a lot of, I think you had people haggling for the original. I don't know if it's sold yet. I know I can't afford it. You're living that life, Miles. But yeah, the thing that I like about your work is the positiveness, even in its commentary on the difficult. There's this warmth in the maybe again it's the use of color, or the way the images of the faces, the structure of the faces, that there's the elongation of them somehow feels there's a gentility to the way you craft and create figures that yeah, I don't know if you want to jump in or say anything here, Greg, but yeah, it's just really exceptional work and really happy to have it included.
Thank you.
It's the senior artist on the scene for us.
Thank you.
You know, I think the whole the piece for me, one of the pieces for me that really sort of jumped was the Love on Lockdown when we first came in, and the amazing thing, of course, was a lot of this work. The work that's included in this exhibition was not in the exhibition in Jamaica, so we hadn't seen the physical pieces until we unwrapped them at the space to hang on the wall. This piece, I believe, and I believe I'm correct, this is the piece that the PL Art Gallery Museum and Archives actually purchased.
Yes,
that's right.
Yeah.
So they've acquired this piece for their collection.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
They acquired
someone else who wanted it, so I didn't realize it was gone. Okay.
They acquired a print.
Okay.
One of the limited edition prints. I did a run of 10, and they acquired number 1 of 10. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. So they're not the ballers I thought they were for a minute. I was like, why they got the original? Okay, that's good to know. The original is still in play because there had been questions. Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah, no, it's gorgeous.
Thank you.
This is one of the reasons for us that you have no idea until you stand in front of this. Like, and we know, those of us who are art lovers, that it's nice to engage online, but nothing replaces being in front of the work. And I mean, we had the privilege of hanging and being there to see this, and this thing, like, it's spectacular. It just hugs you. I think you're right. There is, I get this, your kids are teenagers, but the sense of the family, and the kids are just old enough. It's almost a commentary. You hear parents talk about when they were in this perfect age where they're old enough that you don't have to, change diapers and stuff. They can function on their own,
Yes.
but they're still in awe of you when they look up
right. at you. They don't answer back.
Miles, there's a quick quick question for you, and this is, I think, true for all the artists. But since you mentioned it, where are people who are listening able to purchase the prints or find the prints? Is that on your particular website?
Yes, you can go to my website, and there are several links to different ventures that I'm involved with, let's just say. But yes, you can access the prints on my website, milesregis.com.
Excellent. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we have Owen Gordon.
Mr. Owen Gordon.
Greetings, everybody. I'm supposed to start.
Yeah, you're just going to talk about some of the work, maybe share some stories, Owen.
Yes, I guess I'll start with the community policing.
Yeah.
I don't have much to say about it except for the editorial that came about. You might have saw it, Greg, from the
I did.
Star. No,
You didn't like it?
Well, no, I think it was good publicity, but I believe the person who wrote it had a kind of a bias towards the police. And I thought they were biased, but you know, when I analyze the police today, I think that person's kind of partially right. Because this was done when they were good policing, but now with them giving out tickets, $1,000, it's not much of a community policing now. It's more, well, I'd say bylaw officers writing tickets. So that is why I take back what I had said, the criticism for the person, I think her name is Dunlap, Miss Dunlap. She wrote a piece about the community policing and said, well, I don't see any community policing here in this painting. I wanted to say, well, they couldn't be having tea or in a cafe. You can see they're in active duty. And this was done quite a while, 1995. I might have run out. Oh, yeah, here we have the tenement conflict. This sort of reminds me of when I lived in tenement yard in Kingston. A tenement yard is a dangerous thing. I was fortunate to grow up as a one boy in a big yard my grandfather owned. So I wasn't exposed to tenement yards till I was like a grown teenager. And it's when I was a young adult I realized how dangerous a tenement yard can be. Unlike a residential place, you know what's going to happen tomorrow. But a tenement yard can be the best peaceful neighborhood till one tenant move in. And that tenant bring a whole bunch of different environment and vibes. And this was my expression of the feeling I had in tenement yard. Nothing was really set in stone. Today you're nice to the neighbors and they move out and a terrible neighbor move in tomorrow. And of course we have the extreme social distancing, was inspired by the COVID lockdown. And I suppose I didn't start this canvas with intention of a COVID isolated person. I wanted just a woman sitting on a chair, but I realized she's all by herself. What kind of motif can I put on the backside? Put a curtain and a drape to one side and decide to call it extreme social distancing. And the person kind of looked sort of like hangry or not wanting to be social. You can see the eyes don't look very friendly. And we have now the political graffiti. It's an abstract painting that I decided to add the collage of the images of the face. And as far as political graffiti, I suppose it tells you about our politicians who are rulers now, they're not governors as they should be. So it's sort of like I don't mean this painting was in protest of them, but this can be adapted to a present day situation where politicians are all confused, they don't know what to do. And it sounds like graffiti. And then we have Ode to Gwen and Len Johnson. Now, as you know, Gwen and Len Johnson owned the bookstore in Bathurst, the Third World Bookstore. And I met them in 1975 when they had a store on Bay Street. And I hung out with them quite a lot, and Lenny got to like me kind of sort of very much because, as you know, he was half of his parents were from Jamaica. And Gwen, his wife, she was from African communities somewhere in Ontario. Very historic couple. And so I wanted to do a sort of a homage to them. As you know, they both died, and I think they deserve a more memory than what they've got, because the bookstore didn't last. You know, they died and it died along with them. And I didn't want their memory to just fade into oblivion. So I did this painting to sort of honor them. And as you can see, they were really up there in African culture. So the collage of all the people, that is sort of like all the people I met in the bookstore. We used to gather there on Saturdays, and quite a little university, all the philosophic conversations, and of course a lot of wild conversation too, and a lot of hyperboles and sometimes some nonsense, but it was fun. I'm not sure what else to say, but I suppose I don't need to remind that I was born in Jamaica and all that, but it's quite an experience working in Toronto. Living here too is an experience. I tell the truth, I get kind of homesick these days when I'm watching the bloggers in Jamaica who keep putting their dash camera on they're putting the cam on their dashboard and just driving around Jamaica. And I'm sort of getting a driver training because I'm getting accustomed to drive on the left. But I was watching this one particular blogger. He doesn't do anything but show you images of Jamaica highways, and it's some beautiful imagery. And it also scared me going to Jamaica because the roads look so narrow. I'm like, whoa, the lanes in the back here is wider than this. And of course, you know, they just ripping. Well, you both experienced in Jamaica last year, darting around corners, driving on the horn.
We'll get you in the car with Omar and you'll be fine. We'll take care of you.
Greg. I used to love that when I was younger, but I'm getting old now. I'm probably a little timid and scared of broken bones.
So we have some questions that are coming in for you, Owen. So I'll just jump in to say people are inquiring as to whether you have a website or not. And I'll give a quick context for you. And then I think both Shelley and Gaetane have some questions and comments. So you don't have a website. I know you have a presence on Instagram, but it's a secret presence, so I won't give that out if you don't want it there, because I know you are there more as a voyeur to watch and look at other people's work, and you don't really use it to post your own work.
So true, again, and it's kind of on the cover now because I haven't been able to put some proper material on that Instagram site. So as soon as it's come up front, we can announce it.
Okay, so I figured as much, just knowing how you've been managing and dealing with it. So we met Owen Gordon through a referral from Betty Julian, who is an African-Canadian curator in Toronto. She works, I believe it's with Prefix Gallery. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's where Betty is. So she's very, her practice is largely photo-based. And he was, I guess, in the summer of 2019, having been painting for over 40 years since he's been in Canada, retired from the city. I think he'd been retired for about 6 or 7 years at that time, decided to start looking more actively for a place to show his work, and went into this building called 401 Richmond, which is right downtown in the city, and has a lot of art and culture spaces and galleries. And he was inquiring in different spaces, and Betty knew about BAND and suggested he come to see us. And so we met when he came by, and he had some photos of his work, and you couldn't tell, as we know, even from these digital things, you don't get the same sense of seeing the actual work. So I think that August, and then I think it took about September, October before I went to see the work. And then I brought Dr. Julie Crooks, who's also a co-founder of BAND, And as they say, the rest is history. We kind of from there coordinated and took a small selection. I think it was 4 pieces that was at the art fair in Jamaica, and sold, I think he sold 2 of the 4 that we brought down, or was it 3? I don't remember. Anyways, he sold 2 to a collector in Mandeville who has a really good eye, because she took some really good pieces, small but really strong work. And then he had a show at BAND in the summer of 2020, even though with lockdown we had a limited access. BAND, for those of you who don't know, because as we know, with the great thing about this digital platform is there are people that are here from different parts of the city, the country, and the world on the call. So it's in a Victorian house right downtown off of the Queen West Arts Corridor in the west end of the city. So that meant we had the benefit of being able to do shows really safely because the space is small. We could mount the shows, and then we could, because especially for the summer, we were in the backyard and people could walk through in isolation visits, see the work, and we would just stay outside. They wanted to say hello and talk about the work. We'd end up sitting socially distanced out in the backyard, or they would leave. And so it really, in having a limitation on that type of easy access, we had a lot of people come see the work, including Nicholas Metivier Gallery and some of his team members who really liked the work. And so you'll see on the screen that it says courtesy of artists Nicholas Metivier Gallery and Band Gallery, because the work that was on loan was when Owen was almost in the transition from the work that was in consignment at BAND for the show, and the fact that Nicholas was in the process of basically starting to investigate potentially representing him, which they do now. So inquiries, you'd probably see some of the work on their website, but it's not out in the world yet, as he hasn't built a website. So I know you're all very curious to see more. Believe me, the more is as gorgeous and brilliant as what you see here. So we're really excited. I'm going to throw over and stop talking to Shelley and Gaetane to comment, and then we'll check, because I saw some other questions that people were asking, and we'll try and take as many as we can. And bless you, Claudia, for putting the links in the chat so people can see what is online at BAND and at Metivier. Who's first? Gaetane, you first?
Sure, I can go on. Hi, Gordon. Owen, sorry, Mr. Gordon. I had a question for you. So who were some of your, because as Karen mentioned, you know, you had a full-time job life, and then you always were making art, right? So
That's correct.
what were your first influences? Are there painters from any era that you look to as references, or?
Well, I started out in Jamaica as a kind of a painter, not a professional painter, just, you know, dabbling around. And then I moved into, I became unemployed. So I took up sculpture, wood carving, and I gradually developed up from little sticks that I was whittling. I developed some very sophisticated sculpture. I think Greg might have saw some and Karen did at my house. Very elongated figures. And I used to sell them to the Jamaica craft market. They sell them to the tourists. So I made quite a good living from those little sculpture. And I worked with some Conde artists from Tanzania when I did a little partial tuition at Jamaica School of Art. And so I learned a lot from the African artists, especially from the Makondes. They do a lot of abstract sculpture. I didn't exactly copy them, but I saw where there was some African influence in my work. So I saw them on I won't compare myself with the Makondes, but on a kind of a similar looking vein. And I used to walk around when I was in Jamaica and sell my sculptures, or I'd go up to the universities on Saturday, University of West Indies, and sell a lot of paintings. And so I got quite a lot of paintings scattered all over Jamaica. I was thinking a good idea for collectors to sort of like to put the word out that those are priceless stuff down there. Anybody's got them down there rich. Those are from over 40, 50 years ago. And I was very much younger, and the style was very unique. Does that answer your question, Gaetane?
Yeah, well, the reason I was asking is because when I look at, for instance, this work, Ode to Gwen and and Len Johnson, it's so interesting to see the different types of figures that one can find, that you're representing. So, some are facing, like, I can see references to African mask. I can see a bit of cubism. The way you're treating also the space as this, like, all over, where there's so many different narrative happening, like, in all over the painting. And it's kind of, I love the layering. It's as if I could dig deep inside of the painting and see so much of what has inspired you, or the different types of work that seem to live in your mind, right? Because
Yes, it has something to do with the complexity of the bookstore itself, because there's a wide selection of people that came through there, all different races and all different kind of people. And so it was sort of this particular painting, although I use a lot of heads and faces for motif in my other paintings, but this one particular, I wanted to express my feeling of being inside of the bookstore. Not the one down in Bay Street. The one in Bathurst is more of a, because Bay was more sort of a bourgeoisie neighborhood, but up on Bathurst, it was more the Black community. So you have a more vibrant spirit up there. And so I find that my best experience with Len and Gwen was at the store in Bathurst, where everybody came in, politicians, great African Canadian people, like judges. A lot of things happen in that store. Like, for instance, it was discussion in that store that led to the Canadian government recognizing the fact that the first Victoria Cross medal was won by a Jamaican. He won 2. And they kept it under the rug for many years. In fact, they didn't want to mention it because he was not a soldier, he was a cook or a laborer. But on the battlefield, he went out and rescued people on the fire with nothing, no knife, no nothing. And he got the 2 Victoria Cross. I believe it was the first recipient in Canada. But being a Black person, they didn't like to show anything about those things here. And it was in that bookstore where a judge, I forget his name, but they built a little parkette in front of the Broadview station with his name. I forget, a prominent Jamaican judge. He was on petition.
Stanley Grizel.
Yes, that's right, Karen.
Grizel, yeah.
Mr.
Sorry, I'm crazy
Grizel.
about Canadian
And
history.
Owen, I have one last question for you. Do you paint like every day? Like, how many days can you go without painting?
Well, that's a very interesting question, because I sometimes go for weeks and months without painting. Most of my palettes, Karen must have seen some, got paint very thick on it, which isn't really good. And that is because of the various, it's not mood or nothing. It's like, yes, sometimes I have a thing where I just don't paint because, as you know, it's as African people in this world, we always find some personal thing to depress us, or the world depress us by some person getting killed or some tragedy. So I'm not blaming it on anybody, but I have a time when I just harden up the palette and I want to paint. And I discovered recently that painting is addictive. And I never thought of it. I never realized that. But I used to take it for granted, like the other day I sat for about a week not painting and I'm procrastinating. And the minute I take up my brush, I've got 6 paintings done in 2 days. It's like you just want to go on and on. But ever so often something will throw a kibosh in the work.
I'm going to check and see if Shelley's there, but did you have a question, Javier? No, you're fine. Shelley, do you want to?
Yeah, sorry about that. My internet's unstable tonight, so it's been going in and out. So first of all, thank you for including me, and I just want to say thank you to Xavier and Miles and Owen and all the artists. This is a real honor to be here. I've been, Karen asked me to confine my questions and comments to Owen's work. So I will abide and listen to Karen.
No, you can do whatever you want.
But now it makes me want to talk to everyone. But I know time is of the essence, so I'm going to confine my comments and questions to just a few minutes. First of all, I just want to say it's too bad that we can't meet in person, because one of the startling things about Owen's work is the texture. So unfortunately, seeing it on a computer screen, you don't get any sense of that. And, listening to you, Owen, talk about being originally a sculptor makes a lot of sense, because there is something very sculptural about your work with the collage and the texture. So even though it is an entirely flattened picture plane, there is a lot, it's interesting, there's depth because of what you do with all the different materials in the collage work. But what also strikes me, just seeing the first three artists, is there is something about, and maybe that's the art historian in me, that Caribbean diaspora, there is something coming through. And it's this wonderful thing that you see in an era like ours, like 2021, where it's this melange of modernist, right? Understanding global practices and what modernism is, combined with a very Caribbean sensibility. And it's really quite stunning. And I would call it a sort of, whether you call it diasporic gaze or a Caribbean gaze, but it's really quite special. And Owen, I think everyone gets that sense from listening to you. You're not only an artist, you're a storyteller.
Thank you, Shelley.
So one of the things that certainly drew me in with your work is you're not only seeing something visually so engaging that you can't stop looking, and this work in front of me right here, Ode to Gwen and Len, is a great example. It would take probably at least a few hours to figure out what's going on here, because there's a lot going on visually, but there's also this incredible backstory, right? So you're both. So it's this gift. It's like having this incredible writer and this incredible painter and this incredible artist in our midst. So thank you to Greg and Karen for discovering Owen and all of the artists included. But I guess, and I guess on the heels, and I know I missed a little bit of what went on between the exchange with Gaetane and Owen, on top of influences, and Owen, my father, and please don't talk about yourself being old. My father, also Jamaican, who just passed this past year at almost 93. So you've got a lot left in you to keep going. Can you comment a little bit about, you're about a generation under my father, about that experience? And I know I grew up with a lot of stories from my father, about Jamaica and about his Canadian experience coming as a young student at McGill University. Can you comment a little bit? I know you came in the 80s, correct?
What do you mean, comment about my experience in Jamaica growing up?
Well, your experience about being, a Jamaican coming to Canada.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and how that contributed to your work. Can you comment a little bit on that for us?
Please refrain the last question, Shelley. I missed that.
Sure. One. You came to Canada in the 80s, is that right?
That's right.
So how did that contribute to your work? I mean, it sounds like you met others here, other Jamaicans, other from the Caribbean community, but how do you think that journey as a Jamaican in Canada contributed to your work?
Well, it didn't contribute when I first came. Actually, that's not true. My first visit to Toronto, I was just a visitor, and a gentleman, Mr. Eugene Chin, invited me up, a friend of mine from Jamaica. Actually, he was a Jamaican, but he lived in England. He came to Jamaica and saw my work and wanted me to come up here to live, kind of under the table. But I wouldn't have any of it, so I decided to stay for a while. And so we went down to Coles. They were open on Sundays those days. And we bought a whole bunch of stuff. And I did about 60 painting in about 3 days. And they're in Toronto now, but because I knew I was not legal, and his name was Edmund Chin, I signed the painting Chin Slick. So if you ever see a painting, landscape, Chin Slick, hold on to it, it's a valuable piece. It's my first set of artwork. It was done in 1975.
Okay.
And then I went back to Jamaica And I came back here and I didn't have much influence. I lived up north in Engle Arts for a while, and I did a couple of wood carvings, elongated carvings up there. And I came back to Canada, and I wasn't happy because I was not permanent. When I got permanent, I don't think I was doing too much painting. I painted, but I wasn't getting encouragement. People were thinking, I look too much like Picasso, you're a fake. And people were thinking I was copying African motif. It's when I met some people at Leonard Gwen. Other African artists now used to come there. I don't recall all, yes, Jamaican artists, popular Jamaican artists. And other people that I met there, like artist, Karen knows him, Mr. Charles Roach. He had some good inspiration, a good encouragement, for not just me, but for other Canadian artists. And so I find that my old inspiration started when I started working as a garbage man for the city. That's when I started to get a lot of experience. I also become a psychologist by just watching what people throw out in their trash and why would they throw these things out. And so I think I developed a sense of wanting to express. And so I started to buy a lot of art material. But to tell you the truth, I was lacking in inspiration at one time. I just didn't know what to paint. I'd paint, and because I was working so hard as a truck driver, I couldn't concentrate fully on my work. It's when I had holidays, the longer I work there, you get 6 weeks holiday. When I start getting 6 weeks holiday, that's when my art took off. Because I could take 4 weeks off at one time and they wouldn't mind. And that was 4 weeks of just doing my work. But I developed most of my present day skill after I retired. Although that might be a short statement because I had 40 years of work, but it was sort of like, as Karen and Greg saw, I painted over so much things. I ruined them because of the insecurity. I developed my security as an artist after I retired.
But look at the gift we now have.
Yeah.
So I think you gave birth to some pretty astounding work. And all artists go through periods where they can't. But what's actually happening is you're giving birth to new ideas and new thoughts. So we're all very grateful for the work you have created. And I'm sure we'll continue to create.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Shelley. It's a compliment hearing it from you. I appreciate it very much.
Thanks so much, Shelley and Gaetane for that. I mean, I knew when you have an elder who's been making work for over 40 years, it's we could sit in his pocket. And again, as Shelley mentioned, part of this experience is this canvas of the range of what's out there, what's in the diaspora, what's at home, who is young and up and coming, and starting to get a sense of what the Caribbean cultural landscape is like for our artists. We're going to move to the next artist. Belinda, can you cue the screen? And Lady Krystal Ball, you're up.
I was so engrossed.
No, Owen does that
Listening
to
to
everybody.
Owen, I was like, oh, hopefully I can remember to talk. That was so good. That was so good. So yes, my name is Krystal Ball. Actual name, not an artist name. And yeah, it was a joke between my parents. Long story. But my name is Krystal Ball. I am from Jamaica, Kingston, Jamaica. Well, Portmore. I just say Kingston because I figure that's what most Canadians know. But I'm actually from Portmore, Jamaica. My family is from Westmoreland. So yes, I have been doing art my entire life. Started those as something that was out of convenience because I spent a lot of time in the hospital growing up, and it was just so convenient for me to grab a book, pencil, a sketch pad, anything, and I'd have that to keep my company, especially because I wasn't in school a lot of the times, so I didn't have the ability to socialize very much. So I've been doing art, went to art school in the US, and I'm just like, I need to go back home. I realized while there that I was so eager to leave Jamaica that I felt like I did myself a disservice. So I went back home, lived on my own, did the whole 9 yards, the struggle, and just really wanted to learn about my culture, have a good understanding of it. And it was weird because I am from the ghetto of Portmore, where is grew up in an area called Waterford, um, with my other famous compadre, Vibes Cartel, if anybody know of him. Yeah, so I grew up in that area, but then I went to a very prominent high school in Kingston, and it was a weird dynamic because you go home and you have a certain lifestyle, and then you have to go to school and behave a different way. Because we had rules like you're not allowed to speak patois at school, you're not allowed to leave your natural hair out. You're supposed to carry yourself in a certain way to show that you're one step above um, the others. And then yet when I go home, I am among the others. So because of that, and that's part of the reason I wanted to leave Jamaica so badly. So going back, I really got a chance to appreciate that environment and look at it from a different perspective, look at it from a different angle. Like, why is it that I'm so predisposed to viewing this as something that is not okay or not of any value to me? So from there, I went traveled the Caribbean, wanting to learn about the same thing because everybody knows that most Jamaicans, the aim is to leave Jamaica and go to big foreign, which is the US or Canada or the UK. But I wanted to know like what's going on in my own backyard. So all of these pieces that you're seeing right now, um, it's just to explore identity, like who am I in a post-colonial world? Like what, like how do we perceive beauty? What do we accept? And like what are we measuring that against um, at this point in our lives? Like why is it that we will automatically place things in the category that we place them without second guessing the root of that's influencing that? My art pieces is also about isolating scenes or people and putting them in a more palatable setting so that we're able to digest that person and see them as actual people and not just their situation or using their situations to judge them. And it's also to give these people a chance to be in the spotlight because these people are the movers and shakers. They're the contributors to culture. When you hear about Jamaica, you hear about dancehall, you hear about reggae. You're not hearing about like the highty tighty nothing that's going on really and truly. And that underbelly is what is like refined and marketed to the world. Um, and profit is made off of it, but the people who contribute to it the most don't end up benefiting from it. So I just wanted to focus on giving them a chance to own their own culture. That's it. Karen, you're on mute.
Thanks so much, Krystal. We're holding on this image ambiguity, which I love. I love this work for a bunch of reasons. One, because of the, I think the right word, because I'm not an art historian, it's the kinched which is a reference to the Victorian tapestry that surrounds it and the lace. But I think it was Gaetane who saw this in the gallery and talked about the hope of the blue, just the tone of the blue, and that juxtaposed against the albino woman. For me, it just says a whole bunch about, it's almost a commentary on the tension between so much of that Victorian colonial identity that has shaped the way class is structured throughout the Caribbean. Because we know the presence of colonization throughout the region and its creation. And this, for me, comments on that history while also speaking for the hope of moving, as you said, in strength and identity through it. And yet it's present always, but it isn't weighing you down. You're still hopeful in spite of it. There's also just, for me, the technical elements around the way the textures and the layers almost feels three-dimensional in the way you paint her clothing. It gives an extra depth alongside the tapestry that surrounds it. And again, this piece, you don't really have a sense of it until you see it in person. But yeah, one of my faves from you. Sarah, do you wanna, I know I can see you're hankering to dive in here. Should we let Sarah? There you go.
There, I think that worked, right?
Yeah.
Hi. You know, I don't think Owen's the only storyteller in the group. Krystal, you're amazing. I could listen to you for forever. You're generous. You tell your personal story, but you also tell through your artwork and through your words. You tell stories that are very, very personal. But there's I did see your show at BAND, by the way. Thank you, thank you. And when you see these pieces in the flesh, there is this tension between the painting itself, as you paint on fabric, sometimes I think on canvas,
Yes.
yeah, and sometimes on upholstery fabric.
It's a mixture.
Yeah, yeah, like you're pretty brave in a lot of ways. You'll just jump in and see what happens, right?
Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of that, but there's also so much really specific thought that goes into, you know, the Victorian florals, the lace, the way that you've got the portrait ovals going on. I think sometimes it's really tongue in cheek, like you're poking fun a little bit. I can see there's a glint in your eye. Which is also really super compelling, right? Like you just pull the viewer in, and even, as I say, even when you're looking at them, when I was looking at them in the flesh, is that painted or is that textile? Did she paint that rose? Is that real brocade? And it's a beautiful, compelling way of telling the story of the person that you're depicting.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So,
oh, go ahead.
So it actually is a bit of tongue-in-cheek, especially around, well, Karen knows how I feel about the situation, where in Jamaica it's like there is a phrase that says anything where black no good, meaning anything that is black is not good. And you're told that repeatedly growing up, and you're supposed to embrace what is British. You're supposed to embrace a certain level of modesty. So I thought it would just be interesting to put a lot of the characters that are viewed, are looked down upon in society, or are the outcasts against these backgrounds that are traditionally seen as more beautiful because of the association that it has with the monarchy. So you will see dancehall queens against a traditional wood that looks like artwork that belongs in the master's house, and that's the idea. So thank you for picking up on that.
Well, It doesn't hurt to access the video, the interview that you have on the band website. I strongly suggest everybody accesses that if you can. And there you were talking about, well, you were talking about a lot, but you were talking about the madras fabrics. Can we go back a slide, please? Yeah. So with Whose Paradise, you can see the woman's collar in the madras fabric, and also it's the same fabric that is framing this portrait. There's a lot else going on, but maybe you can talk about this textile as signifier, Krystal. I found that fascinating. Like
So,
island has
yes.
a different madras.
So in the Caribbean, back in the time of slavery, there was a need for uniformity. And as such, the British went about and got fabric to make uniforms for the slaves. So each country, each island had their own fabric. This fabric, the madras that's known to Jamaica, is called a bandana, is for Jamaica. And even now, so it was worn by slaves during that time in Jamaica, and now it's widely accepted in pretty much every island that I've been to. I've seen it where on cultural events such as Independence, you will see people dressing in these fabrics. But what's interesting is this fabric is used in the tourism industry in Jamaica. So it's used to make a lot of the uniforms that the people wear at the hotels or tourist attractions. And I find it a bit curious that this would be the choice of garment or the choice of fabric to be associated with the tourism industry, seeing as though it's descendants of people who were put into slavery, serving people who look like people who put them into slavery, and having the exact dress up, and the fact that it's just continuous, and the sort of treatment that the people who are wearing this uniform continue to get to this day. So that's what I wanted to highlight with this piece by including the fabric, the bandana.
Well, the title is fantastic. It matches your story, the piece. It's very provocative. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. We're at 7:12, and I mean, I knew it's a big group, so I knew we wouldn't be hurting, and the work is exceptional, so I knew we wouldn't be hurting for conversation points. I do want to let people know that if they have comments or questions, to just throw them in the chat, because we'll keep moving through. And yeah, thanks so much, Sarah, for taking the time. And again, Krystal, as always, storyteller. We're going to move to the next artist, which is the one and only full textile artist in this, and I'm so looking forward to this, Katrina, because I feel like I've had hints of the talks you've given around the context of this work, so to get a bit more fulsome look at it in its full context is going to be fun. So it's over to you, Lady Katrina.
All right. As you said, yeah, Katrina Coombs. I am a fiber artist. I'm based here in Kingston, Jamaica. My practice on a whole is really looking on the identity of the woman. It really started as an investigation into my own identity and the notion and roles and responsibilities that are surrounded what a woman is expected to be within society, whether the mother, the caregiver, the one who takes care of the home, but yet you're still working and juggling all sorts of things. And I think in investigating that, I've realized just how us as women put strong restrictions, if you want to say, or roles on ourselves and expectations on ourselves, not necessarily even celebrating just what our identity is as a woman, as a childbearer, as a caregiver. And in recent times, I've been looking on how the body of the woman becomes othered, you know, looking on the womb and how the woman herself no longer sees during certain times, for example, when you're seeing your menstrual cycle, your womb more or less becomes another entity. I mean, down here in Jamaica, there are times when a girl's going through a cycle, they say like the red auntie come to visit, or that damn red lady, as opposed to saying, I am going through this process. And I think I've started to really look on how the womb has this negative stigma behind it through this processes of something which gives life. You know, it is that which gives us the purest thing that we can have, and that is our very existence. And so a lot of the work has been looking on that taboo nature of the womb, of processes, of the fetus, and even just looking on the notion of loss. And even within my own personal work, where I went through the process of the loss of a child and how that really struck me in how I related to people, because there's always this little sense of hush hush that happens. But the body of work within this exhibition, it is really looking, it's a set that came out of my solo show, Iyamiaje, which means, it's a Yoruban term, which means the womb of existence, my mother God. Iyami means mother, and Aje is God. And just how within that culture, even just looking on my own ancestry of the slave trade system of coming, how the culture of our African ancestry lives within us as women. We carry the different energies of the different deities which surround us, which within this collection, I've been surrounded by the energy of the Oshun, which is a Yoruban goddess. And just looking on the notion of how the body becomes a sense of currency, a sense of strength, looking at the symbols. So I use the fiber and the fabric. Fabric, it's this maternal object. It's also an object that I think is very domestic. It is the first thing that you are drenched with when you're born. You have to wear clothes. It's your sense of security. And a lot of this kind of drives me in how we perceive the notion of fabric, how we perceive fiber being built up in relation to that of the woman as a vessel, and how we are carrying and moving through different segments of our life, and the womb becoming a vessel, the fabric becoming a vessel, and just how there are many different ways in which there are objects within the home that are also related to this, whether if it's a basket, so I'll use different basketry techniques, or even the knitting-based techniques, which are kind of conducive to the notion of garment in the creation of the pieces. But for these set of works, I was looking with the Yoruban nature of the cowrie shell. So you'll notice that pops up a little bit. If we could perhaps go back to the yellow circular one, where the cowrie shell, it's used as a symbol of security. It's also a symbol of the shape of the womb. So within Yoruban culture, you wear it around, they'll have the beaded chains around the stomach, which is said to protect the womb, you know, as well as it's also worn around the neck as a sense of your stance within society, as well as in headgear. So, I mean, there are a lot of times as we go through in life as women, we're constantly guarding ourselves. We're always constantly on guard of the womb, of our relations to the opposite sex, you know, whether if you want to be pregnant or not pregnant, or if you are, there's always this sense of need to protect thyself down there. But then even with the first image that was shown, as it breathes life, life is taken, is even the fact that the cowrie shell within the center, if you guys could have just seen this in person, within the center, there are actually 9 cowrie shells that runs across which is used within some sections of the culture as a rites of passage. Once you die, you're buried with 9 cowrie shells, which you're used as payment to pass over into the other life. And then the vagina in itself, it becomes this sense of a passage, a pathway which gives life, and in the same breath, it also takes life, because you go through your cycle every single month and you are losing eggs. You know, your eggs are dying and it is passing through you, but yet within the same process of the body, that is the same thing that gives you life. So I kind of play a lot with all of these different notions of the meanings behind fabric, the meanings behind fibers, the cowrie shells that bring in symbols. I am a very spiritual person, so I do not limit my spirituality to that of our African ancestry, but also to the ancestry, different ancestries that are within me, because I have mixed culture. I mean, I have Ireland in my blood, Chinese, all over the place. So I have a tendency to look up on all of the different entities as it relates to the woman within the culture, how the woman builds, how she carries herself within the culture, but also how she owns her body and how she pushes that forward. I mean, like with this piece, Oshun's Glory, it is really looking on Oshun in herself as this vessel. She is the goddess of life. She's the goddess of gold and riches, which is that which the number one richest thing that you can have is that of life in itself. Yeah, so I think that's me.
Katrina, I want to thank you again for being part of this, and I wanted to ask, I guess, jump in and ask Sarah. I know you probably have some questions about the process, etc. I wanted to comment, Katrina. I loved. There was an amazing comment you made in the interview you did for the radio a while ago, and I found it. You've just mentioned how you're a very spiritual person, and I believe that comes through in the work. It has this resonance to it, even without the specific stories. That there's a presence to the work that I think is really important. Unboxing it and hanging it in the space was really amazing. But you talked about your birth, and how that maybe brought you to working with fiber. And I just thought it was such an interesting thing to understand, or to pull back to the very beginning of your life. And so maybe you can just tell that story. I don't know if that's fair.
Okay, all right. So
maybe you don't want to, and that's totally fair.
It's fine, I have no problem. It's become a trend now. My birth was a complicated one. I was 10 days delayed, and that was really because the umbilical cord was wrapped around my neck. So when somebody asks me, when did I say I started from in the womb, because I've always been fascinated with fiber. I found myself to be fascinated with fiber, the very nature of it. And it's even interesting on the fact that now with my practice, it is related to that of the womb. So, maybe there's a need to go back in of the interrogation of the womb in itself. But yeah. So I've been playing with threads before I was born.
Thank you.
So we have a quick question before Sarah. I don't want to neglect there's been a lot of comments and I feel bad, but please, Winsome from Belize is just like in awe, wants to get in touch after this. And I promised her I'd follow up, Katrina, because she's really enjoying the commentary and the viewing of the work that's come from your practice, and just saying, the work's amazing. There's so much depth. And one question that came from Michelle is, how long did one of these pieces take to create? And maybe we can answer that question before we throw over to Sarah.
The week to create one of these pieces, anywhere between a week to a day. It all depends on the technicality of the piece. Not even so much a technicality, because I love weaving. So for like work, I can just box them out. But it all deals with just what I really want to get out of the piece, and if it is happening while I am creating it, as well as even with some happy accidents that happen. I mean, with this last piece though, that one took me probably 3 months on and off, juggling it, Ocean's Glory. But the others, it roughly, I guess you can say a week to 2 weeks, roughly. Wow. Yeah.
Looks like months, Katrina. It looks like months of work, not weeks. That's amazing. Yeah, Michelle said, wow, wow with me. Sarah, do you want to weigh in? And then I don't know if, I'll check and see if there's any questions, but we can also, Gaetane and Shelley, I know you're telling me I restricted you, so if you want to jump in here, you can do so. And then jump back to any of the other artists. We'll show some of the work from Ela Lovelace and comment briefly, but she wasn't able to make it on the call. So we've got time, just under 30 minutes to dance around a bit and come to some exchanges with the artists if we wish. So yeah, Gaetane's like, yes, please let me back in there. So Sarah, you're the Textile Museum of Canada, so you get to go first.
Yeah, me first. Wow. Katrina, you understand cloth as a sculptural material. You understand weaving. You're weaving, and it's just so close to my heart. I could go on about that, but maybe on a one-on-one we can geek out a little bit on woven form. I want to make note of the scale of these things. I want to see them in the flesh. I want to be in the same room as them. Thank you for putting the dimensions up on the screen. It's super important. This thing is 2 meters wide, armor of the other. It's huge, right? It's more than my own wingspan. I know that. It's more than yours. And there's an enormous physicality to the work that connects it to the body. It connects it to what you're talking about, right? This one as well. It's not as, I believe, tell me if I'm wrong, it's not as fully 3-dimensional, but it's still, there's dimension there. It's again, it's understanding textiles, weaving as a dimensional substance. My question is to do with my own ignorance. Is there much of a weaving tradition? This piece is knitted, but the others, I believe, are loom woven. Is there much of a weaving tradition? Did you learn that through your family, through formal education? What's that story?
Okay, so there isn't much of a weaving tradition here in Jamaica outside of perhaps the commercial baskets. It's straw, which you'd normally find in the tourist sector. I learned when I went to college how to actually weave. I was interested in knotting because my first venture with fiber was with macrame. And that I learned in high school. And then it kind of grew from there when I decided that I wanted to go and do weaving in college, not really knowing how complex it would be. But yeah, I mean, for me, I just love the techniques. Honestly, I only learned how to weave on the loom and some basket techniques while I was in college. Everything else, even with the knitting, because this is finger knitting, all developed out of just my fascination with the material and need to know more. So I'm always constantly exploring different ways, bending fiber and molding it in different forms. And even figuring out, okay, I mean, it looks hard and as if it's just in the fact you can build form with fiber and not just a 2-dimensional plane. Her constellation, it is on a 2-dimensional plane, but it has a sense of relief based upon the type of woven techniques that were used and then the layers of the fibers that were placed in front of that. So I play with the mixture of colors and mixing of fibers to create additional dimension within the pieces, not just the form itself, but the colors that are coming through and the forms that are being built up on the pieces. So yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot more of an investment in material, equipment when you're weaving, right? Equipment and space. you know, all of which are not always hard to, or not always easy to come by, right? So if you're doing more direct techniques, it's
really hard to come by a loom in Jamaica. I think you probably can find a handful of looms down here.
I love how
to have
Sarah's
gotten,
like not so sure if it's easy to come by.
It's not easy to come by. And then with the import issue here locally, it's even harder to buy from overseas than bring it in. But it's a lot of investment. You have to, if you want to venture in fiber arts locally, you have to really decide to make the choice to invest and go with getting what you need to execute what you want to do. And for me, I've just set my goal that this is what I want, and I am making fine art. It must be sculptural or wall pieces. I'm not interested in garments or interior, well, some interiors. But yeah, I think locally, it's kind of hard to stick to it. And especially with the fact that it hasn't necessarily been one of the mediums that are considered as something you can buy and actually put on your walls here. So it's been a bit of a struggle even to just keep the practice alive. And because of that, I've had to reach out, which I think residences have really served me well as an artist and as a fiber artist, now being able to step out of the circle of Jamaica and then also not just step out, but it's very important for me to bring it back and to develop the fiber arts industry here locally and for others to see it as a viable means to be an artist here using this medium. Yeah.
Don't stop. Don't stop.
Sarah's brain's working on the Canadian residency. Don't worry, we're totally with you there, Sarah.
That's right. Karen and I are
we're plotting
and scheming. We're dreaming and scheming.
We're dreaming and scheming. I'm going to quickly just jump to, I think Erin, who's from PAMA, so I can't miss Erin, was saying she wanted to hear a bit more about the piece Constellations, which she finds really mesmerizing, and maybe to talk a little bit about the long drapery and if there's a waterfall symbolism there. So if you can comment on that, Katrina, and then I think I have a couple, again, just a lot of love this work. Winsome saying, make your own loom. She said she has a carpenter that made small looms for her. She's in Belize, so maybe we're gonna figure out how she can make it in Belize and ship it to Jamaica for you. Or a residency in Belize, just, more travel. Nikki Purdy, these are truly fascinating. Gaetane, happy to jump back in when we let her. Yeah, people just super positive and interested in hearing more. So I don't know if you want to talk a bit about Constellations, and then we'll throw it over to Gaetane.
All right, so Constellations, it is as it is. But it is looking at the woman's body as a constellation. Our cycle goes with the stars, and but also on the notion that as women, we're actually born with all our eggs. Like I don't quite remember how many eggs we have at this moment, but we're born with all our eggs, and our body goes through this process of releasing enzymes at a certain point in which one then gets captured and one doesn't die, sorry. So you release the enzymes for the eggs, and then there's a process of them being attacked and killed, and one gets survived, and that becomes an egg, which then passes through. So it's really just looking on the notion of how the body generates itself. I mean, we think that every month we have a new egg, but really and truly, we have the full capacity from birth. And just how that even relates to the stars, how our body aligns with the stars whenever the cycle comes around, and even when we're shifting over to menopausal, and just how we hold that energy within us as constantly. I mean, the womb, it rips into itself, and it also heals itself. And so this piece, it was really just looking on all of those little notions, because even when you get into the meat of this, a little bit more into the details, there are actually fine beads that are also hidden underneath the layers of those fibers that you're seeing coming down. Yeah.
Yeah, again, for all of these pieces, I mean, it's I remember Greg and me watching, knowing the symbolisms that's there around the women's body, but watching with him and the others who were gloved as they were hanging and then releasing the threads, because of course the way it's packed to ship, you want that waterfall sense of sensibility for the look. No, I just remember my brain going, I had to look away because it just feels like a man is handling. So that shit's hilarious. It was fascinating to watch, but again, it was watching that and then watching the beads that were shown. It was like there's so many layers and textures in there that gives all of the depth that goes to the storytelling that you're sharing. Just quickly as well, Shelley's saying she loves the range and diversity and complexity of the works in the exhibition. I mean, that again is part of the fun for us, I think for both Greg and I, was that this didn't really follow usual curatorial rules of trying to determine a lane and then having the work all fit into a particular lane. It really, we were comfortable in the kind of higgledy-pigglediness of it, just letting really strong work be present and sit adjacent to each other, and then the benefit of these conversations to really unpack that. So we're happy that people are happy about that complexity and the range, because that was purposeful. I think we've unmuted Gaetane.
Thank you so much. And thanks, Karen and Greg, for bringing this work. And really, I like now, you know, I really cannot, unfortunately, I haven't seen your work in the flesh. And
But you will.
Well, thankfully, you know, let's hope that the show stays on, or it will go at the McLaren so we can actually in time for us to go see it. But I'm really impressed. Not even, the word's not impressed. It's like your work is all in. And when you talk about it, there's so much layering in it, which I think is so interesting for the visitor, because in a sense, even, you know, with the title, like for instance, of this work, Oshun's Glory, there's a way that you let the spectator in, but at the same time, people who might not have the reference, you know, might not understand the depth of your conceptual comment in the work. And yet the way you occupy the space with the colors, with the materiality. And this is, again, I haven't seen this work in the flesh. I'm just looking at it on the screen, but there's the weight of the material and the way it occupies the space is so interesting and intricate. And so really, I mean, congratulations. It's really glorious to see this work. And as you were talking, I mean, I know it's not on the screen, but what I see behind this and behind you in your studio, I'm intrigued by what is that work that is just behind you, because even, you know, twice removed from the screen, the materiality, I just want to put my hand through the screen and go touch this work. So I was wondering if you can speak about the work that's behind you.
Okay, the work behind me is cornucopia, which is also, it's a part of Greek mythology. It's the horn of plenty. So, you know, the cow horn or the goat horn, and you normally have the fruits coming out. So what it is, it's a symbol of fertility. Mm-hmm. And it's a symbol of the farming, which normally so everything just went through my mind. All right, so it's really looking on the fertility of the woman, being that a fertile object, which yet is not even fertile, because I don't know if everyone is seeing, but there are actual sacs that are within here, which are also empty. So it's like a full body which carries objects which are not yet brought to fertility. So yeah.
And then my last question would be, have you, what has been the reception of your work in Jamaica? Like like in when you've had exhibitions or even showing your work?
I've had good reception in recent years. And initially at the beginning, it was in a struggle to even just have my works being exhibited. But I think the key to it is that I have been consistent, and I have even made my own exhibition so that my work could be seen. And that has allowed there to be some sense of acceptance of this material and medium as an art form. And then even I think with the context that I am now engaging in, it allows a diverse conversation between both male and female on the body of the woman as to how they interact and relate to it, which is really where I am pushing the work to create conversation and to provide a voice for that which we don't normally speak about. I mean, you don't talk about the period, you don't talk about having a child or losing a child, a miscarriage, an abortion, all of those different conversations that are mummed. It is really my work, I think, as what has happened to you, it pulls you in. And that is the intention of it. Fiber, fabric, texture, and a general context, it pulls you in to want to touch, to want to engage. But then the context within the pieces then kind of pulls you back a little bit to say, wait, what is this? Do I really want to even speak to this or have a conversation? But the works forces them to have a conversation. Even when I had this exhibition, which this was a part of my solo show, Iyamiyaji, the work As It Breathes Life, Life is Taken, which was the first image that was shown, that work stirred up a lot of conversation in terms of what the shape generally would represent, you know, whether if it is the vagina or if it is a passage. Both male and female had different perceptions to the piece, and that's something that really fascinates me when I create the pieces, just to hear those conversations and to see and understand the perspective of others for the piece, as opposed to even my own imposed perception of why or what I created it to be. So yeah.
Wow. Congratulations. Thank you very much.
We have just under 15 minutes. I'm gonna quickly just explain the title of the exhibition, and then we'll let Shelley have a final comment, and then I think Greg might close us off with some details or references, or just so folks are aware of the show touring, as well as we want to do a bit of pause for the cause to thank the media sponsors that were part of the promotion of the show, especially in the Brampton, Mississauga, Peel region area in the west end of GTHA in Toronto. So one of the questions that was asked in the chat was, someone asked for us to explain the title. I don't know about my colleagues that are on, because I think we've got a whole, I'm just scanning names, and there's a bunch of folks that are working in some layers of curatorial practice, but I like titles for shows that are not obvious. And so when in looking, as you can see, at the range of the work, it wasn't, and there wasn't an obvious title that would somehow summarize, because Greg and I didn't say, oh, this is a show we want to do. We're going to pick artists that fit perfectly into this paradigm that we're creating. We threw something at the wall in Jamaica, something stuck, and then we said, okay, let's bring this abroad and show this initial offering of what we hope will develop and grow into a real interest and understanding of what the Caribbean artists regionally and internationally in the diaspora and at home are saying, and what might happen to work if that conversation was supported, so that the Katrina Coombs could stay in Jamaica and create this work, but still be global. Because I think for us in the 21st century, what is happening for most of our identities in the region, it is not our parents' movement is not an assumed must, I think, for a lot of Caribbean people now. I think we feel, many of us feel global. So those of us in the diaspora feel a connection to home, and those of us in the region feel a connection to the diaspora. And some of that is about, I think, the brain drain of the 50s and 60s of how many people saw success as outward and looked outward and left and built lives abroad but remained connected to home in different ways. And so this notion of the sea struck me, and it's an Irish poem. This is the first title of the poem by a artist from the late 19th century, Austin Clarke. And I actually Googled Austin Clarke looking for the Bayesian Canadian writer, Austin Clarke. And I was actually trying to see if I could find, because I don't know about you, you loan books and people never bring them back. This was one of those. I had the trilogy of his works that he wrote around the settlement of nurses and educators in the 60s, as well as growing up stupid under the Union Jack. And I thought one of those books may, within those prose, give me something for reference, because I always loved the way Austin, not only in the way he spoke, but also just, I mean, he's a great writer, he's a brilliant writer. And he was Bayesian. So I just thought, let me see if I can find something, having known him and knowing his work well. But I Googled Austin Clarke writer, Austin Clarke poetry, because I thought maybe he's written poems, and this piece comes up. And the piece is actually, that reference to the sea is actually about this woman who is a planter. She's a merchant's daughter, so she's quite wealthy, and it's about her carrying herself within the community with this air of success and confidence and beauty. And that idea, that line, when night stirs at sea, for me, hearkened to this idea of what the sea represents, because of how the Caribbean Sea really frames the region, and just what water and being in that region as the collective of islands. The 26 plus for the sea art brand is because we wanted to reference the fact that there's over 7,000 islands in the Caribbean region, and there's 26 nations. So it was just the notion of what that meant, and the reference to night for me in that line, again, nothing to do with what the Irish poet was saying, but I took it to reference just that idea of rest, but also the transition of how the sea in the day in its openness almost beckons you, but at night there is, Maxine always has a saying, a friend and colleague, Maxine Bailey, that Bayesians say, the sea don't have no back door. You can get in, but you can't get out. The sea don't have no back door. And it's this idea of, if you know you're not a strong swimmer, you have to really be careful how you enter the sea, because there is no way out. There's a way in, but the way out is not always clear. So that was kind of some of the thinking for me in choosing that title, When Night Stirs at Sea. We've had a lot of really positive feedback about how it evokes a sense of the unknown and discovery. And I hope that that sense of discovering and finding and inquiring, the notion of light against dark, night against day, knowledge against ignorance, that juxtaposition and the tensions therein is a key part of the exercise we wanted to do here. So yeah, that's my long story on the backdrop of the title. Shelley, are you still there?
So first of all, I just want to say, wow, you know, Krystal and Katrina just added a whole other layer to the exhibition, and a really strong feminist layer. And as someone who is of Jamaican heritage, I really appreciate, you know, Krystal taking that deep dive into the colonial roots, something my father very much grew up in, going to sort of a boarding school, which was like the Eatons of the West Indies at JCC. And I was certainly raised with it through his family, you know, and of his generation. So yeah, deeply understand a lot of those references and a lot of those comments. And really appreciate, Karina, a lot of that work, so powerful. And so what I meant about the complexity of the works in the exhibition and the range. So to Greg and Karen, big congratulations, because what a, you know, I don't know, it must have been very challenging to pick all those works. And I can't imagine, as those of us who work as curators, we know, but wow, that tells a really expansive story. And I think one of the things that I just wanted to respond to, which is why I was begging you for a few words, was I was a bit worried about something Owen said. And I've heard this many times from artists who come from, and I'm going to use a Canadian term, often for the East Coast, called from away. Yeah. So who aren't from here. Oh, your work's derivative. Oh, your work looks like Picasso. Oh, your work. You know, now having been in this business for over 25 years, it's code in many ways for you don't fit into the mainstream. It's honestly, when I really think about it, the truth is Picasso spent a lot of time with African art in order to create what he created, as we all know. And the story can go on, right? Matisse and Japanese art, and we can go on and on. But it was okay because they were, you know, white men. So what I want to say is this. I think it's so powerful what all of you artists have done. And everyone, all creativity is rooted in what comes before and understanding what comes before. And the key is, it's okay to work with what's come before and then create something new and unique. And I think pretty well, except for Newton, which is why I'm glad this is open, the idea of a truly original idea it's impossible, because we build on all that comes before. And the wonderful thing about artists, whether you're a filmmaker or a writer or a visual artist, you build on what comes before. So I'm deeply sorry, and it really upset me when Owen told me what was said to him. It's just not true. It was just, I think, and I apologize on behalf of our art world, that there was this thing for a long time, and we are in the very early days of really, and Greg, I know, because you know about this too, and I know my colleagues Gaetane and Karen know too, that there was a mainstream in Canada that we stuck to, right? No, but I want to say that what I love about this exhibition is this is the beginning, right? It's like a cleansing. It's about time we make space in organizations. And so I got to say a shout out to the Peel Art Museum, right? For doing this show, for being brave and doing it.
The PAMA team are thanking you for giving them some love for taking a chance on our Caribbean exhibition. There's a few highlights in my career. Band is definitely one of them, but this Sea Art experiment is the other. It's I'm really, really excited about what's to come, and being able to do things that really, really crafts the Caribbean aesthetic. And no matter what happens after this, you guys are foundational. You'll always be the team that helped to make this thing a reality. So special shout outs to the Mileses and the Katrinas, because your careers are sitting in a place that you didn't have to think this higgledy-piggledy little thing was worth your time, but you said yes without question. Miles definitely said yes and sent work to Jamaica out of a referral from another colleague. So, you know, bless. Thank you all. We'll quickly do a roll through. Belinda, just roll through the work, and then we'll just open the mics for all of the artists and let them jump in. And then Greg will say thank you to the media partners, and then we will bid you all good night.
Hello. Yeah. It was an absolute pleasure to be a part of this, and it was so amazing to hear all of you speak. I mean, I'm so inspired. Just truly, truly magical stuff. Again, it has been an honor. Thank you.
Javier?
Cute accent.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to everyone that turned out. Thank you to everyone that participated, the artists, Karen, Band Gallery team, PAMA, everybody. It's a pleasure to be a part. Yeah. Yeah, thanks.
Owen, are you there?
Yes, thanks to all of you. It's been a pleasure meeting Shelley and Gaetane, connecting with Greg again, and meeting Christina on the internet. It's a pleasure. Maybe sometime I come to Jamaica, I might see you. And Karen, thank you very much. And it's nice to meet the other artists. I don't want to screw up your name, Regis. And this gentleman here from Jamaica, Javier. Yes, so it's been a pleasure, and I really appreciate the exposure. And I thank you again, Greg and Karen, for putting this on. And I don't want to forget Sarah. It's a pleasure meeting you also, ma'am. My pleasure indeed.
All right.
And then Krystal, you want to go next, or should we let Katrina have the last word? Who's up? Which one of you powerhouse sisters will close us out?
I will go. Katrina is doing a very good job, so she can close. I would like to thank everyone. It has been a pleasure. I cannot even begin to tell you how much I appreciate Karen, Greg. Phenomenal job. I was lucky enough to be behind the scenes to see some of the absolute magic, we're gonna say magic, that happened to produce both the show in Jamaica and to see it here in Canada. Thank you so much for being inclusive of all artists and just being very open. Also, special thanks to Claudia, who
Claudia's the magic maker behind the scenes.
she is the head cook and bucket washer.
We all work for Claudia. We're all here for Claudia.
Yeah, so thanks Claudia as well. Thank you to the artists. Thank you for everybody that tuned in. The comments, the kind words. It's really appreciated. Thank you.
Katrina.
PAMA and Greg, thank you guys so much for putting this on. I mean, it's we need more of this happening where the Caribbean is going out, and just the voice around the Caribbean arts and what is really being produced within, to not necessarily be the context that once people think of Caribbean art, all they think about is that touristy base, but to know that there is strong potential, there's strong art that's coming out based upon our different cultures, our different ethnic backgrounds, how we live and how we cross-pollinate with each other. Congratulations to you guys as well to putting this exhibition on, and thank you to all the fabulous artists, Krystal, Miles, Owen, Javier. It's an honor to be amongst you all. I look forward to seeing all the wonderful things that's going to come out of you guys in the future. And Karen and Greg, looking forward to more projects, looking forward to seeing how this is gonna bloom, how much more this is just gonna blossom and continue with a monopoly. Domino effect continuing on, and yeah, looking forward to great things.
So quick thank you.
Your comments, your feedback. I'm glad that you enjoyed. Would love, hopefully in the future you will get to see all of our works in person after COVID has passed. But thanks for coming out and supporting. Your support is really greatly appreciated.
Thanks also to Belinda and Nisa, who were also behind the scenes with the tech help. And then Greg, over to you.
I thank you, everyone. I'm echoing. I just keep echoing everybody. Echoing everybody that thanks everyone. I do want to before we get to thanking. Well, let's thank the media sponsors first. Let's thank PAMA. Everyone at the team of PAMA was amazing. It was great to work, and I'm glad for the opportunity to have put this up. And they arranged a lot of media sponsorship, which was great. And so those are the Brampton Guardian, the Caledon Enterprise, Mississauga News, New Theory Radio on Saga 960 AM, Toronto Caribbean News, and One Caribbean TV. Thank you. We've got a lot of great press and a lot of great interviews through those connections. One of the things I wanted to say before we go is just a reminder that this exhibition came out of something that Karen put together and created the C Art Fair, the Caribbean Art Fair. Last year, exactly this time, was the launch, the inaugural edition of that fair. It's a fair that takes a different approach, I think, because Karen takes a different approach to a lot of things. But it's not necessarily. The intent is not about making money. It's not about, I spent a lot of time in the last decade working at art fairs around the world, and they have become something different than this is. It's a continuing thing. We're going to do the next edition of it in 2022, likely right back in Jamaica. But the idea is that it will grow and include the entire Caribbean and possibly move venue to venue, depending on, every 2 years, possibly have satellite events in different places. So it's and it really is about exploring the art that's being produced in the region and bringing attention to it and creating dialogue and creating those kinds of connections that haven't necessarily been there or haven't been the focus right now. So it's exciting. It's the anniversary. So happy anniversary to all of the people that were down there last year and everybody who participated, and looking forward to being there again a year from now, and looking forward to seeing the show in its next venue, which is the McLaren Art Center in Barrie, opening in the spring. To be details to be confirmed, dates to be confirmed. So thank you guys all for being part of this again, and thanks.
Thank you very much. Good night, all. Till next time.